Hello once again, and welcome to this long overdue episode of Creatives Flow with a VO. I am still your curious VO, or voiceover, Tim Dadabo. Yes, it has been a minute since we've last got together, but, I've been busy doing the thing I actually do. My other work, being a voiceover. So thank you for your patience, and here we go. Digging once again into the gray matter of creative people. Today we're gonna bang the drum with the sales drummer, Tony Lenhart. Tony Lenhart is the brother of a dear friend of mine who I basically grew up in this business with. He's going to tell you a little bit about his company he's a partner with and how he creates ways to help you create. So without any further ado, let's say hello to Mr. Tony Lenhart. Do you have your coffee? Are you ready to go here?
Yeah, all jittery. Let's go.
Well, hi, Tony. Thanks so much for taking time to be here. So I guess, it's always best to start at the very beginning with, tell us where you're originally from, sir.
You bet. I grew up in German settlement farmland in rural Ohio, Northwest Ohio. And I slowly have started moving west. I kind of stalled out in Chicago. I'm trying to get out to Colorado, but, ties that bind.
You got a little ways to go.
I know. Baby steps. But yeah, that's where all my family originates from. And as we'll get on to tell you, I mentioned the German part because my father played in a polka band, of all things. So I grew up going to, the Elks Lodge and the Knights of Columbus Hall and eating hot chicken sandwiches and polka dancing.
Nice.
How you spent the weekend.
And drinking lots of beer, I hope, yeah?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he retired from poking when I was probably about 5, so
okay.
I aged out, but I found it in my later years.
Very cool. Yeah, man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love Wisconsin so much.
Sure. Right. They have a bias for it.
Well, and of course, the further north you go, the more Germanic it gets. Great, and Swiss, truly. I mean, that's why there's such great beer and cheese and Bavarian.
Right. Which on my one side of the family is also very strong Czechoslovakian. So you have a lot of that, all that baklava and nut rolls and a lot of that ancestral food.
Oh, absolutely.
It's great.
And I love all of it. I'm kind of bummed that so many of the great German restaurants are going away. So, what exactly is SEG? Sure.
So if you're not into the whole brevity thing, SEG stands for Sales Empowerment Group.
Okay.
Which sounds like a superhero tribe a little bit. In fact, our first logo was like a little man wearing a cape, flying into the air to, accelerate sales for companies.
Mm-hmm.
So, but, that's what our firm does is we get hired to build or rebuild sales organizations for small, mid-sized companies, all sorts of different industries.
So they're struggling, and you guys come in with a creative solution to rebuild them? Or
yeah, well, going back a little bit to the beginning, I was raised, my dad was in sales and my mom was a therapist. So I tell my clients I was basically bred to do exactly what I do today, which is sales therapy. A lot of it is helping improve communication and remove roadblocks and friction so they can get the job done.
Awesome.
So a lot of these companies are founder-led sales, right? Mm-hmm. They had a passion, they grew a company. Before they knew it, they tried to hire a few salespeople, and they don't have the time, energy, patience, desire, or skill set to do it.
Right.
But they've already somehow miraculously maybe grown to 10, 20 million in revenue.
Wow. Okay.
So it's really coming in, popping the hood, looking at everything and saying, okay, let's do a little diagnosis before we prescribe, and then I stick around for maybe 6 or 12 months to help them do that. So at any given time, I'm working with 5 to 10 different companies, different industries, helping them solve those challenges.
That's fantastic. Because I understand, not being just a voice actor, but a businessman, reading so many sales books and so many positive motivation books still to this day, that there can be sticking points.
Well, I use the word friction too, anyway where there's friction, again, internally, the people aren't getting their job done, or externally, people just you're not making it easy for people to engage with you.
Right.
It creates roadblocks.
It does create roadblocks. Absolutely. It creates a roadblock, and what'll happen is you can't get out of your own way, and you need somebody from an outside source to look in and see what those roadblocks are. you know?
Yeah, objective set of eyes and ears.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I read about people who do what you do is, you come in and we're like, hey, can you help us see past what's going on in our message? And can you help us move forward? Because we're doing well, but we're still stuck. I mean, Stephen Covey used to do a lot of that. He would come in and look at the community as a whole and show them where they could do better,
Right. And usually I say to people, listen, you're probably doing like 80-90% of the stuff pretty well. It's like, we're just going to look at, I'm not going to rock your roll too much, but we're going to look at that 80-90% that's working, polish the edges, and then hopefully we can figure out what the gap is, right? Whatever the 10-20% miss is, and we can prioritize it from there, depending on how fast you want to go.
Absolutely.
Which for everybody who wants to go fast, but then if they go too fast, they break. So, anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's super fun work. I absolutely love it.
So now, what is your gig, and what is your duties exactly? What do you do within the? I know you're a partner, but what does that entail?
Yeah, so these days I'm doing a lot of client delivery work. So post-COVID has allowed me to spread my time out across more people.
Okay.
So I have 10 different clients right now I'm engaging with, and just to give you an idea of that, like, I have a client that's in the staffing world. I have a creative marketing service agency that does marketing strategy and studio and creative work. I have like a healthcare technology, a real estate tech, a general contractor, builder, overseas offshoring staffing company. So I could keep going, but just the point is, like, I get pulled into all these different spaces, working with the sales people on helping strategize on a deal, or having literally a therapy session with the owner of the company saying, okay, listen, calm down, we're going to get there. Like, what are the issues? So I'm doing a lot of that different work, right? And then in any little time that I do have, I'm out, I'm still out trying to build our business. I do a good chunk of our own sales for our company, which beyond the work I'm talking about, we also recruit salespeople, but then we have a big division that is basically, Tim, you'll love this. It's like a AAA farm team for salespeople. So our biggest headache for our clients was recruiting, onboarding, training these young reps. So we just do everything. We go out, find them, train them, onboard them on our payroll, and then if they do a good job after 6 or 12 months, clients hire them away. So we manage about 200 salespeople that are now, post-COVID, in 38 states. They used to all be downtown when we were like half that size. But now we're hiring young sales reps all over the country. So anyway, that's a big piece of our business, and what I'm help, again, it's all part of that sales team building stuff.
That is so cool, Tony, and so diverse.
Yeah. It's a wild model.
It's really, really diverse,
Yeah.
And now how many, it looks like there's quite a few people working at SCG, yeah?
Well, there's the 200 reps, and then we have about another, I'd say, 30 associates that support that management staff.
And is it based in Chicago?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, our big empty office downtown at State and Madison. It's all good.
Yeah. I got a buddy that does a big gig for BBB, and he said, I go into the office once or twice a week, maybe. Everything else is done remotely.
I have this great old foosball table there, though, and I really want to bring it home, and it's just been sitting there dormant. I actually negotiated it off one of my sister's ex-boyfriends, but that's another story.
It's so sad to play alone.
Yeah. It really is.
I'm sad. No one wants to play with me.
So I have to ask, why? I assume you must be a drummer, or you were. Why sales drummer?
Yeah, a few things. It's a little bit of a nod to my old man, who, again, he was the drummer in a polka band. So my dad had this beautiful old Slingerland drum kit, and they used to make them right out in Niles, Illinois. It's now like Chicago Drum Company.
Oh, I know.
And I still have that.
I'm an old musician, my friend. I'm a musician. I get it all.
So I still have that old kit. Marine pearl, it's gorgeous. So I grew up with the drum set in the basement, right? But I come to find out later in life that drummer is actually a term, like an old school term for a salesperson.
Drumming up business.
I'm out there beating the drum, drumming a business, which I guess dates back to like the Old West. So when the salesman would roll into town in his horse and buggy and wagon, he'd start banging on a drum, and that's how everybody knew that the guy was there to sell, whatever, pots, pans, tobacco, whatever he was slinging.
Mm-hmm.
So
Awesome.
anyway, it came to fruition. So when I left corporate America, back in like 2010, I started working for a small business, and I was meeting a ton of people, and I was like, I got to find a way to stay in touch with these people. So started it's not even a newsletter; it's kind of a monthly digest called Sales Drummer, and I've been doing that for years.
Right.
So,
I saw some of your bits too, some of your YouTube bits, and you have a podcast too, yeah?
no, I don't.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't.
I
I'm
thought you had a
on
podcast.
I'm on podcasts on occasion, and I've thought about taking that newsletter and turning it into one.
Well, I think it'd be brilliant, especially if you interview your clients. So A, people know what they
Mm,
do, and B,
sure.
you're inspired by what they do, and to
Mm-hmm.
lead into other new ideas. I mean, this
Mm,
podcast is truly about people thinking outside the box, how they think creatively and how they think outside the box, where their ideas stem from, and how to
mm-hmm.
think in a progressive and creative manner.
Mm-hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah, I think that would be cool if you did that. Uh, So how did you end up here? You're a partner. Did you form the business with other partners, or did you join the company and become a partner?
It's the latter. I joined in McCain. There was just one founder. It was a guy I worked with at my old job. But I was probably about 5 years into my career, and I was getting itchy working for big corporate America, and I started interviewing. And I went
Hmm.
out and I interviewed this company called Errand Solutions.
Okay.
And they would basically run errands for busy people. So like they'd set up a little shop at like a hospital. So for all the nurses and doctors, and they'd run their errands. There are a
Hmm.
lot of different applications. I digress. Anyway, I met
That's
this
okay.
woman who was the VP of sales. And she told me that she was actually just the interim VP of sales.
Okay.
I was like, what's that? And she's like, she basically explained what I just explained 5 minutes ago about my work. Like I go into different companies, I do all this stuff. And again, I'm probably 27 at the time. And I just look at her, I was like, I want to be you when I grow up. That sounds amazing.
Cool.
So I didn't get that job. I ended up staying in touch with her and staying at my company. And then this guy that I worked with at ADP, like 5 years later, he had started doing some recruiting, and then people were asking him to come in and do this work. And he called me up one day and he's like, Tony, I'm doing this thing called, like fractional VP of sales. He's like, I think you'd really like it. And I just like, I couldn't believe it. And so I started doing it, I basically started moonlighting. One day a week, I would do a little consulting work. 4 days a week, I'd do my other job. Then 2 days a week consulting. And then the teeter totter just went,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
and there I was. And I was doing, I was 33 then. And, en route to doing, my dream job, probably the first few years very poorly. And hopefully the last, 6 or 7 a lot better, and even today the best, right?
Sure.
Um,
We learn as we go too.
the older I get, the more I realize how little I know.
Yeah. See, that's wisdom, my friend. That's what they call wisdom. And it's good not to know, because if once you know everything, you stop learning anything.
Right, right. And the idea of like getting more knowledge so you can unlearn, right, what you
Absolutely.
think might be out
Well said, grasshopper.
there. I've been reading a lot of the Tao Te Ching. I can't. It's just right there with me.
So, was working here kind of a dream gig, or it's one of those, like for me in voiceover, it was a dream gig that I never knew I wanted or even knew
Hmm.
about. So, I mean, was working here a dream gig, or did you initially start out wanting this, or something completely different from what you're doing now?
I mean, yeah, when I graduated high school, my dad gave me two things. He gave me a copy of the Sales Bible by Jeffrey Gitomer
Mm-hmm.
and cassette tapes of Brian Tracy, who's like a Zig Ziglar type,
I know him
um,
well. I saw him.
called The Psychology of Sales.
Mm-hmm.
And I wore those cassette tapes out like when I got my
Sure.
first sales job a few years
Sure.
later. But everybody told me I was going to go into sales, you're a natural sales, all that stuff that you hear, because I was just like my old man. So I always knew I'd have a career in sales. The fact that I got to start doing what I do now at, relatively early age, starting quote unquote consulting work. I feel fortunate, but I think again, not to dive too deep or get too altruistic about it, but it's like that power of the secret, the power of the manifestation thing, right? It's like I put it out into the universe, and wow, look at that, showed up.
Sure, and it's so very true. I mean, I've seen that in my own life. And my first foray was "See You at the Top" by Zig Ziglar. I started with his tapes. From there, I started listening to Earl Nightingale, and I was like, well, I would really like to go to a motivational seminar. So I scraped together money to go see a Zig Ziglar seminar that had Tony. Oh my gosh, Zig Ziglar was there. Or Tony, I forget the guy's name, Hawkins or something like that. Not Hawkins, but he was a big timer. Brian Tracy was one of the speakers. I mean, it was like the rock stars of the motivational world, and they all did like a 30-minute or 45-minute bit.
That's awesome. I'm sure you still resonate with some of the things they said there that, piqued their heads.
I look at it this way, okay? Everybody's in sales, Tony.
Right.
Everybody's in sales. I don't care what you do. Everybody's in sales. Every time you show up to be a painter, you've got to be a salesman. And that, why do you still want me to be your painter, boss or customer? It doesn't matter what you do for a living. Everybody's a salesman.
Yeah, well, you could say the same thing for when you convince your kids it's time to go to bed, or you convince your buddies to go to, what would be a good Chicago reference, one bar instead of another bar.
That's right.
But Dan Pink, there's an author, Dan Pink, he wrote a book called To Sell is Human. And that's the main premise. It's like anytime you convince somebody to do something, you're flexing that skill set.
You bet. I love the manifestation thing too, because I have seen that happen for me. And part of it is, once you get an idea and build blocks to get there, that's part of it. You have a goal or an idea on the top of the paper, and you break it down, which is one of the things Nightingale said, the 20 things each day. He said it's like digging in a vein of solid gold. Well, every time you do that, he said most of the ideas won't be good, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But he said if you find even one out of those 20 that you can implement and turn things around, it's like you said, it's like digging in a vein of solid gold.
Yeah, and Trace used to. There's an exercise that I still tell salespeople to do, and it's basically that a little. And you just if you face a problem, phrase it as a question at the top of your page.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not making any sales, and so the question at the top of the page is, how can I make more sales? And then you write 1 to 20, right? And you force yourself, right? The first 5 are easy, the next 5 are a little bit more challenging. But when you twist your mind around a problem like that, there's bound to be something that's there that'll help you move forward.
Absolutely, dude. Cool. Absolutely.
It's so awesome that you went to that stuff.
I went to several. I actually got to meet Zig once, but I just watched Jon Stewart accept the Mark Twain Award at the Kennedy Center.
Nice.
And one of the things he said is so true of either your business or my business or anybody's business. And I just taught at DePaul, and I said this, and it's true. There is no fixed point. You got to keep moving forward. He said comedy isn't a fixed point. It's always moving. It's always evolving. He said, and the ones that are successful are the ones that just keep showing up. So, and I believe that's very, very true. Yeah. I think it's true of anything. You got to just keep showing up and saying, what can I do different, better today? So, where do you derive your ideas? Meaning, how and where does creativity come to you to bring this to your clients? I would imagine that everybody's, situation is different, and they all have different needs at any given time.
They do, but what is wild is like I might have a problem at the general contractor construction company, and then we work on a solution to solve it, and then, hey, oh my gosh, it works over here at this health tech startup with no clients, but they could apply that same principle. Right? So that allows to bend the ideas into different industry helps me a lot. But, as I think about the stories I tell in Sales Drummer, it's like I'm going back to my everyday experiences. My calendar looks like a Tetris board. So I have all, all these different colors and times and all these, because I'm going to all these different places, right? And I'm digging back through those to find the story, because inevitably we all have learned lessons along the way. And then in theory, we're like living out those lessons. And so if I quickly go back and look at the different situations, like I told a stupid story about, going on my boys' golf trip, actually, non-work related. And, it was about, we do this annual golf trip, and everybody there is kind of additive to that situation. Everybody brings their unique skill set, whether it's on or off the course, right?
Yeah.
But the lesson there is all around teamwork. Like it wouldn't be a success if that group of people that are all there for their own, have been hand selected to be there. If everybody doesn't lean in, the trip isn't a success. It doesn't matter who wins the cup at the end of the day.
That's right.
So it's like I see the lessons getting lived out, and then I can always draw a dotted line to some, lesson I need to relearn for myself, or maybe that just appeared in a new way. So,
well, I mean, for me, and I'm going to ask you this question: do you find that stuff that you do outside of work can inspire you creatively, like hobbies, walks, workouts? I mean, is there something you're like, wow, you could be? One lady said, it's always when I'm cooking. I'll be cooking and I'll be like, hey, that'd be a great idea. For me, it's when I'm mountain biking.
Oh, interesting.
And I've had some of my best sales ideas on my mountain bike.
Oh, really?
Because I'm not working and my mind is free to play, free to roam.
Yeah,
so
interesting.
How does that work for you? How do you come up with solutions to, let's call them a problem? I don't like to call things problems because they're not really a problem. It's an opportunity.
My wife gets mad at me because I'm constantly generating ideas. Like I'm a creative idea option generator, and sometimes she's like, stop, because I like the idea 4 ideas ago. You need to stop talking. When I see something, immediately, the flywheel is going. So I think one thing post-COVID, and again, maybe a little cliche, but the thing people are talking about is really embracing paying attention in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I find when I'm paying attention, things are right there in front of me. So going back to your specific question, where I get that, and maybe it's the extrovert in me, is when I'm with people. When I can engage, and whether most immediately that is my 2 beautiful children and my wife. And my closest friends, right? And then outside of that, when I'm trying to engage with clients digitally over Zoom,
okay,
right, 10 times a day in these different situations. So I get fed that inspiration, I think, when I'm really listening to other people and trying to be present.
I love that. For me, what is this? Oh, it's telling me I have a podcast with you. My watch is telling me.
Here we are.
Thank you, Siri.
Is that one of your Leisure Suit Larry voices? That was beautiful. Really.
So I don't know if there's anything you can talk about with SEG. What do you? Well, you kind of touched on what you're doing right now. It sounds like you're doing about 10 different things right now.
Yeah.
And if you can talk about them, I mean, I don't know if it's kind of hush hush stuff.
No, I wouldn't say it's hush hush per se. I mean, I mentioned sales therapy with these clients, right? And everything, I can look at all the micro things I do, right? All the boring, granular stuff, setting up a CRM, building playbooks for clients, doing role plays and listening and pretending to be a prospect. There's in the weeds things I do. But everything boils down to the 2 things I said, helping all these companies. They need to improve communication, usually internally somehow is broken. Right, they don't have a good operating rhythm or cadence,
mm-hmm.
And then they need to improve what they're saying to people in the outside world, because they overcomplicate it. Generally, people know so much they want to tell everything, as opposed to the old, keep it simple, stupid. And then the second bucket is that friction, the roadblock thing. Again, internally, people not getting what they need, or in the salesperson's case, we talk about time. Selling is when you're kind of face to face, belly to belly with the prospects, people. You want to be in front of people that can buy, as opposed to doing administrivia work.
I love that.
Call it. So there's that internal friction, and then the external friction are the things that sometimes are outside of our control as sales professionals, around timelines or priorities, urgency, but trying to find a way to diffuse that and seeing, is the person I'm dealing with serious, or is there a lot of indecision here? And if there's friction, how do we get rid of it?
Interesting.
So, that's any 4 of those buckets: internal, external communication, internal, external roadblocks. I'm constantly coming up with creative ideas on that. And after doing, 80 projects now over the last almost 10 years, is why frankly, Tim, I need to start a podcast or write a book to capture all these ideas, because so many things have happened. It's like you start to forget, right? And you have to relearn.
Yeah. Well, and I think like, so many of the people who have written me, I think they'll find it interesting too. Other clients that may have either already worked with you already, or clients that are looking at SEG will hear your ideas and how you help this client out and think, well, crap, they can help me too then, man. So, and the thing that gets me about doing these podcasts, it's like being a teacher. I've heard this from other teachers, and it's true. You learn more from being a teacher than you ever teach.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Or when you're sitting in the class versus sitting in the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a super proud moment in your work? Anything that stands out as, holy crap, I can't believe I helped implement this?
Well, the one related to what you just said on, my personal work is I've been able to teach the last couple of years at a university level. And that's something that my mom did, my sister did, my older sister did. I always had that streak in me of like, in the work I do, right? I'm constantly coaching and teaching. And so a couple of years ago, I got to start teaching an intro to professional selling class, which has been super rewarding. And I've learned a ton. And it was actually a class I took back at Purdue back in the day. Fast forward 20 years later, I got to teach it.
Cool.
And learned way more. And one of the things we had to do, you referenced him earlier, we had to, in that class, they read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the Covey Classic.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which I'm staring at right now.
That's great. I know I have a bunch of copies on my shelf to give to some people who've never read it. The book's only like...
The 8th Habit's great, too, if you haven't read that.
I don't know if I have. I may have done that thing where I read the first 50 pages. Yeah. I'm notorious for doing that. But in any case, it doesn't... But that's been really fun, the teaching piece, and going back and rereading all that. And then as far as other things that I've built professionally, about 6 years ago, the founder and I brought in more partners, and with the whole goal of growing SEG to a point where we could bring in a financial partner, like a private equity firm, to really scale that. And the 6 of us stuck together the last 6 years, and we recently did that in July, which was a really big moment. Because the fact that it came to fruition is very surreal, but then now this next phase of growth is going to hopefully be even like a bigger accomplishment once we grow it and build out the different divisions of the company. So that, from a professional standpoint, to bring a group of people together with similar, vision and values, and actually then watch something like that come to fruition was really powerful for me.
And take the jet plane.
Right. Yeah. It certainly helped just self-assurance and confidence that we were doing the right things. But early on it was scary, but another old Brian Tracyism: leap and the net will appear.
Are you involved in helping others get a leg up either outside of SEG, or, what's the community like? What's that culture like within SEG?
Yeah, internally for sure, right? Since 2014, we started that rep incubator model. We've pulled about 1,000 people through that program, and so I'm involved in training of all of the people that came through that, and then my teaching at PMW. But outside of that, in the business community, for years there's been an accelerator in Chicago called 1871. For those outside of Chicago and may not know the year of the Chicago fire, so it's kind of a nod to the phoenix rising from the ashes and all the industry of tech. But that's a big hub in Chicago. I've been a sales mentor there, done a lot of whiteboard sessions with early stage entrepreneurs, and that's super fun. That actually early on helped me hone my consulting skills, right? I had been a sales manager and leader, but I never got in and really done strategic stuff. So that, again, one of those situations where put myself out there, it created learning for me, but was able to help a lot of people. And then another number-based organization, Chicago, 826 Chicago. You familiar with them? 826?
No.
It's it's an after-school program that kids can come in and work on specifically their writing skills is a big piece of what 826 does, because it was co-founded by Dave Eggers.
I know that name.
He's an author. But in any case, he started one out in San Francisco. And it was like they put out like cookies and milk. We're like, hey, kids, come in here after class. And it was like nobody came because it just seemed weird. And like, what is this pop-up place? And so what might seem even weirder but worked is they put a retail store out in the front that said it was a pirate supply store.
Okay.
And they literally built this retail location where you could go in and buy pirate supplies. Peg legs, eye patches,
Okay.
mops to
Why
swap
not?
the deck. I mean, you should look up the TED Talk on this guy. It's hysterical. But anyway, it proliferated around the country, and now there's
And he
these...
didn't set one up in Tampa where there are actually
Yeah,
pirates?
you know what? I don't know if there's one in Tampa Bay. There might be, but now there's these
There's
different...
got to be.
There's these different 826 organizations around, and the one in Chicago is in Bucktown. And so when I lived in the city, I used to love to do that.
You mean dress up as a pirate?
Yeah, well, one of the reasons I married my wife is because she's always celebrated September 19th, which is International Talk Like a Pirate Day. TLAP, if you know, you know. And so we have a whole Rubbermaid container like full of pirate gear and all sorts of things. We used to throw a party at Parrots. They're on at like Halstead and Clark up there, I think is where it is.
Dude, you got to see Gasparilla. Just 1 year.
See what?
You don't know what that is, huh?
No.
In Tampa, we have Gasparilla. It's Pirate Day.
Okay.
And they have an actual pirate ship that sails around Tampa Bay. And everybody in every bar, every restaurant, there's pirates everywhere. And some of them are really crazy looking cool. I mean, with the beads in the beard and everything like that. And the wenches, with their bosoms hoisted up.
Oh, that's tremendous.
It's crazy, dude. The whole day. Actually, it's a whole weekend. It's Gasparilla weekend.
Gasparilla. All right, I wrote it down.
Yeah.
I have some connections in Tampa Bay. I gotta look in. I mean, of course you too. But. All right.
All right. Well, my last question for you, my last scheduled question for you,
sure,
is one of my favorite sayings for those who ask me about marketing in our industry is always remember there are two words in the phrase show business. Slight the second word, and you may well struggle mightily to make a career as an actor. That said, what bit of advice would you give somebody struggling to find their way in what you do in the business world today? A young person just getting started, or somebody that is, like basically the people you reach out to, somebody that has a roadblock and needs it pushed out of the way.
Yeah. Not to diminish what you do before I say it, but talk is cheap. You need to go out and execute. Like you need to have a bias for execution is what I tell people, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's the ask forgiveness, not permission. I see people that will, read the book or read the blog or watch the video or take the course, but then they like maybe wait for something to happen. They don't go out and sell, or they don't put themselves in a situation to succeed, right? They don't, because maybe they're a little scared or something, but it's like, again, it's one of those older I get, the more I realize nobody knows what they're doing. You just you have to go out and try, break it, and then come back and keep iterating. Because like we talked about earlier,
it's the don't be afraid to fail thing.
Yeah, and
right,
and it's the pace of change too that you talked about. I was talking with one of my clients about it, and he said these days the pace of change, economically, socially, culturally, technologically, across the board, is going so fast that experience, like quote unquote, like you're so experienced, is sometimes more of a detriment than a asset in a situation. Mm-hmm. That you'd never want to be saying, well, that's the way we've always done it, right? Anyway, I digress from the point, but I think it's having that bias to go out and execute.
Honestly, that is the point. And I think that's why so many business people get stuck, because, well, that's the way we've always done it, can destroy a business. Mm-hmm. Because things aren't done the same way.
Things aren't stagnant.
No. Gosh, especially not in sales and especially not with technology. I mean, so many saw technology as a bane instead of a boom, Those that jumped in and were able to make use of it, to a certain degree, dude, I think there is a problem with it. I mean, there is no handshake anymore, or eye to eye, or stuff. And for me, coming from where I came from, that was where the real magic happened. Whereas now we meet digitally, like you and I did. And real conversations are harder to come by. So moving, past what you just said, I hope that the next generation can create true relationships in whatever they choose to do, to build relationships in business. To me, it seems harder to do.
Yeah, it's been hard to form new, strong ties post-COVID, right? Via Zoom and all that. I've certainly seen a little bit of, I guess I'll just call it like a loss of integrity a little bit, especially like I have to hire a lot of salespeople. So you see people just vanish, and it's like so much easier to hide behind all the technology. And I guess just on that topic, there's a book I read years ago called The Trusted Advisor, and written by this guy Charles Green, and he talks about this thing called the trust equation. Actually, you're called, how you define trustworthiness. You actually turn it into an equation, and it's C plus R plus I divided by S. So C, R, and I are your numerator. These are additive to trust, and that stands for credibility, reliability, doing what you say you're going to do, and intimacy, which is like, how safe do I feel with you? Are you being transparent? Are you being here with me, right? Do I feel safe sharing with you? And then the S, the denominator that takes away from trust, self-orientation. Self, right? And in sales, they call it commission breath. Right? When you just know the person is out to get paid or do what's best for them or their company, as opposed to the other way around. And that framework, I think, is super applicable in many situations outside of like professional services and sales. But, trust is sometimes the ultimate denominator in relationships. Right.
And you have to earn that. It's rarely just given. Trust is, always for me, earned,
Yeah, and quickly lost sometimes, right? Doesn't take much to chip one, and I hate when I'm on the
especially
bad end
in
of that.
today's climate, Hey, I saw your podcast, by the way, or your blurb on Facebook, and you were talking about different ways to stay focused.
Yeah, the flow, getting into flow.
If you haven't read the book by Jonathan Hari, Stolen Focus, it's a great book. I want to bring it back upstairs and read it because I've been reading it out loud. And on days when I know I have to talk a lot, I don't read out loud a lot.
Stolen Focus.
It's spelled, it's like Johann, what is it? Johann Hari, Hari. It's called Stolen Focus. And it's one of the things he talks about is the detriment, getting back to the digital world, is we've become so dependent on it, we just can't even put it down. So what he did was, he actually he had nothing more than a flip phone for emergencies. He said, I need you to turn off the texting feature. He did bring a computer, but he had no internet. He went to a very small island on the far east coast of Maine or something like that. He said, I don't want internet. I just want to be able to type so I can write my book.
Yeah. And
he said, it was ridiculously hard the first couple of weeks. And he said, I found myself fading in and out of focus all the time.
Interesting. Yeah.
But that was just part
internal.
of the book.
You can eliminate external triggers, but you still have the internal triggers.
Sure. Especially once we have this, Pavlovian thing. Oh, wait. Oh, my Facebook. Oh, no. Oh, yeah. I just got pinged. Oh, there's a text. It's Pavlovian,
But it's like when I get that feeling of either I get stuck on something because it's just perplexing me and I'm at a stall point. And I'm like, I'm just going to go open the fridge. I feel stuck. I need to move. Or the opposite, I feel I just accomplished something that I was really, I got that. It could have just been an email, right? I got that email out.
That's right.
I'm going to go take a break. I earned a break, and then I break focus.
Exactly.
So it's like that internal intrinsic trigger of reward or discomfort because I can't figure it out. I still am learning to work through that, right? Maybe it's drop down and do 10 push-ups instead of walking away.
I love that.
And dive back in, right? That goes going back to the idea of flow. Yeah.
All right, sir. Well, that was the last point, but here now, this is what I call lightning round questions. And I didn't send them to you on
Okay.
purpose because it's always fun just to see what comes out of the gray matter when we get to these. So question 1 is, what do you do when you're not working? I mean, are there any other pet projects that you're...
I live on an acre of land down here in Northwest Indiana, so I, recently bought myself a chainsaw. I've been cutting wood. I work with the land. I have a garden. I love just being outside in the backyard, whether that's with my kids or working on a project.
I miss chopping my own firewood, dude.
Yeah.
I bought myself a husky and a maul. Oh, dude, I did it for 15 years. I chopped my own firewood. Anytime a tree went down in the neighborhood, I'll take that.
Yeah, and I have I have a big pile of logs in the back. I mean, I haven't even made it done.
Yeah, I mean, and eventually it went from chopping it by hand to going to Home Depot and renting a log splitter.
Yeah.
So
I'm not there yet, but
so you're a gardener, and I mean, is this vegetables or?
Yes, tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, peppers. Yeah.
Nice. There's just nothing like that.
My wife wants to build next year a chaos garden. Have you ever heard of a chaos garden?
Yeah, you just throw whatever's in there. You throw it all in there, and whatever comes out.
Yeah, well, a chaos garden, it goes back to the way that indigenous people would do this, but it would be like a circular field, and they would do corn, beans, and pumpkins. And the beans would climb up the corn stalks, and the pumpkins would spread out and cover the land so you don't have to weed, and they would all work in symbiosis.
Yes. I'm reading Scientific American, and they're in one of the last, as you I'm sure are well aware, more and more of the indigenous tribes are being pushed back, and that's how they grow their food. Everything grows in unison. The corn with the sugar cane, with the coca, because they chew coca leaves at night.
Right.
They grow their own medicines. So
I think you'd want to chew the coca leaves in the morning.
Right. I grind mine up.
Maybe it hits you different when you chew it.
I grind mine up and put it in my coffee machine.
Exactly.
All right. So if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
Wow. One of my biggest pastimes is being a drummer. So, I mean, I've had rock and roll dreams my whole life. I mean, I've played out in bands for the last 15, almost 20 years.
Cool.
Around Chicago.
Nice.
But I mean, never made enough in a month to maybe cover the electric bill.
Exactly.
Right. But,
exactly.
But man, there's always a piece of me that would love to play some of the bigger stages or do a tour.
I did a lot of that, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now.
Get out of here. Well, yeah, you said you were a musician. What'd you play?
I was a singer. I was the lead singer in the band, man.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, I was young and cute and had thick, long hair. And
yes. Dude, that's awesome.
And girls liked me.
Well, is that how you met your wife?
No, actually, not at all. The funny thing is when she found out I was a singer, she's like, "Oh shit, I'm not going to date another singer. I'm not a musician. I'm not going to date another musician."
Right?
Then she came to see me sing, and she's like, "Holy crap, he's really good."
Right on. So there's plenty of stigmas around drummers too, so I've had to fight through that my whole life.
Okay, so where do you see your business in 5 years?
Well, I told you about the big event we had at the company where we brought on a partner. So in another 5 years, we currently today manage around 200 salespeople for our clients. In 5 years, there's no reason why we'll probably be north of 500 with some of the things we want to do, and the staffing and the growth, and the fact that COVID has allowed for not just national growth but global growth. I think it's really going to be something much bigger than what it is today.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this kind of jumps back up, but how do you nurture the people once they come in? I mean, do people come in with college degrees, or do you nurture them to do what you need them to do? How do they get clients? Do they have to make phone calls? Do they have to market out, or are they given assignments?
Yeah, great question. So when a client will come to me and say, "I need to hire 3 people," so my team goes out and finds 9 or 10 candidates that we pre-vet, and we say, "Hey, we like all these people. Pick the 3 that you like best." Okay. So the client handpicks it, but we pull from 3 different places. They're either coming right out of school, business, sales, marketing degree, sometimes music or theater majors. Amazing salespeople. The second bucket is maybe this isn't their first rodeo and they've had maybe 1 or 2 other sales jobs. But the third, my favorite bucket of people that we recruit and hire are people that like used to be teachers or used to be in hospitality.
Cool.
And they got sick of kids or they got sick of drunks, especially a lot over the last 2.5 years. Either bucket, kids or drugs. And they say they want to go into sales. And they're great because they're a little bit more worldly. They got a good head on their shoulders. They know how to carry a conversation. Selling is teaching in a lot of ways. So when we bring them in, we take them through a week of sales boot camp. And then we record all their calls. So we're listening on everything. But they're dedicated to one client all the time. So they get to go real deep on that one client and understand it with the hopes that they're going to get hired away.
Cool.
And then we do a daily rah-rah stand with everybody, and again, we can't be in the office where we're used to it was the boiler room. We'd bang the gong and, spin the dial. And
that's really cool, man. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're constantly feeding them. It's like this big culture of coaching and accountability.
That's really cool.
Yeah. It's a crazy model.
Some of it is sort of kind of almost like headhunting or executive recruiting.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah,
okay.
For sure.
I mean, I did that for all of 5 minutes. I was an executive recruiter. The last question, it sounds like you kind of answered it. My last lightning round question for you, sir, is what do you see yourself doing in the next 5 years?
Man, I'm going to, continue to learn and grow like I'm doing in my work and doing sales consulting. But I bet, hit a breaking point. And, I mentioned I wanted to be a drummer, but my other kind of dream I could see myself doing is starting either like a school of rock or like a music education business of some sort.
Very cool.
Because it allows me to continue to, go out and sell into the community, be part of the community, kind of bloom where I'm planted, down where I've set up shop. So I'd love to do that in my my next career.
Okay. Well, Tony, thank you so much for doing this. It's been great talking with you.
Yeah, you too, man.
Thank you so much for your time, man. And, I'm hoping that, people are listening to this, first of all, that they reach out to you if they need some help. And second of all, I'm sure they're going to learn a lot from this conversation. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah, my pleasure, man. And, for those people in your world, in the creative space and the agency world, I'll leave with just a 20-second story. And the first time I went to audio recording in Chicago downtown, I went to go meet my sister who was working there. And I missed the elevator. If you remember, it was up the tower in the Wrigley building. And I went to the top floor of, not the clock tower, but the top floor of that Wrigley building. And there was a nice old lady working behind the counter, and she directed me to go to the right place. And she's like, before you go, would you like a piece of gum?
And that's why they had gum on every one of the studios.
And I looked down and saw the gum, and I looked up at her, and I looked down at the gum, and I looked at her, and I go, oh, Wrigley. I get it. Everything started clicking. Wrigley Field, Wrigley Building, Wrigley Gum. I didn't realize it until that moment. So
and
anyway.
BBD&O was in that space too, and they did Wonder of Wonder. They did Wrigley's advertising.
Yeah. So every time I see the Wrigley Building, I think of that story going to audio recording.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
That's too funny. All right, brother. Well, you take care. Well, my listening friends, that was Mr. Tony Lenhart giving you the ins and outs of his business and the way he creates. Here's hoping you found that incredibly useful. And if you want to contact Tony, you can find him at salesempowermentgroup.com. As always, thank you all so much for listening. And until we meet again, remember to find your flow.